Good morning, and thank you for coming when you have beautiful Vancouver that you could be outside. So, one thing that was fun about putting this together is that Rachel and I went to the same library school, to UNC Chapel Hill, about 10 or 15 years apart, and worked in the same department. So, go Chapel Hill. So,
Cereals department.
Yes.
Covering cereals library.
Right, right, which is how the NASIG piece comes in. Okay, I have done other presentations about this topic, and it's kind of always moving because we're moving forward. So today I'm going to focus more on the why than the how. So I'm sort of going to go lightly over the how, and that's something you can ask more questions about later. So this is what I'm going to cover. There's more stuff on the slides than what I'm actually going to say because you can read faster than I can talk. So, okay, so this came out of an effort at UNC Charlotte because the first major eBook collection that was available to academic libraries was Netlibrary. Anybody a Netlibrary customer, or have you used it? Well, it was awful. You know, it was the first one out, loaded with DRM, and many of the books, well, publishers were scared of it. So the books they allowed to go to Netlibrary were backlists that they didn't think would, jeopardize sales or something. So it wasn't a very happy experience. And the librarians at UNC Charlotte were getting a lot of complaints because things came in and out of the collection. They could only be used by one person at a time. So that's kind of what started this. So they agreed between technical services and public services, so the user-facing side and the vendor acquisitions-facing side, to remove records for those books from the catalog. And instead, they started a new policy where they would only collect books that they could keep and that would really be usable, and then they would promote those to the faculty. So that's that's when they developed the three principles, which are shown on this slide. So one is irrevocable access, so they want perpetual access, unlimited simultaneous users, and no DRM. So those same things are now called the Charlotte Principles. We were calling them the Charlotte Initiative Principles, but at ERNL we got a better idea. And there's a link on here to our website, which has a lot more information, and I'll show it again on the last slide, so if you don't get it all down. Okay, so in many ways this is kind of a little case study on the value of networking. One of the associate directors at Charlotte sat by Don Waters at a CNI meeting and told him what they were doing. So Don invited them to create a proposal and submit it. So once it was awarded, we put together a working group. A few months after that, our research teams were launched. We're gearing up for a fall meeting, and then this time next year, when the project concludes, we'll have an open conference in Charlotte. And what that means is that there's no conference registration fee, and we'll feed you if you can get there, but you have to travel and pay for your own hotel. You see that? Okay. Okay. The project team was originally people at Charlotte, and before we even started the grant, the person who was going to lead the licensing team left Charlotte, so we had a vacancy. We've been fortunate to have two terrific graduate assistants who have done more work, covered more ground than we expected them to. And as we started identifying people we wanted to invite to be on the working group, we did some research into I'm getting a low battery warning, and it won't let me advance. So, oh, thank you. It's that, but that would be a weird place for it.
Is it back here? Guys.
Oh, great.
Now get your mic on.
Well, that was exciting. Woo-hoo. Little adrenaline boost there.
There we go.
Okay, so as we started doing some research and figuring out who we'd like to be on our working group, we came across this great article by Sharon Farb, who's an associate director at UCLA. And this is really kind of the core of what the project is about. This is the why. You know, what we're saying is ephemeral collections, you know, big packages where the content comes in and out. You don't know from one semester to the next what's in it. You don't have any permanent rights. That's okay in some situations, but for your permanent collection, things that you want to keep in perpetuity and want to be able to use again and again, it's just not good enough. So that's where the library's Awaken part of the title comes from. Libraries waking up and realizing we have kind of ceded our cultural role, and it's not a good thing. We're okay. Thanks. Okay, we also found that there were a number of other statements of principles out there once we started looking. Macalester College is a four-year liberal arts school, and is part of the Oberlin group. So the statement that Macalester was revised by the Oberlin group and has a lot of signatories now. And then Sharon Farb had also come up with one and shared it system-wide for the California Digital Library. So what Don Waters charged us with doing was, you know, he said something along the lines of, what if I gave you $300,000 to convene some like-minded institutions to explore these issues and come up with some recommendations for what would work? So we took like-minded institutions and decided this is what the profile would be. At first, we wanted to work only with nonprofits because university presses are mission-driven, as are libraries. We thought they would be like-minded and more willing to help us find common ground. Within those areas, we tried to get nice variety. And I think we did. These are our librarian members, and you can see these are public and state-supported, large and small, geographical scope, and these people are in different positions. Some are directors, assistant directors, e-resources people, collection development people. We have 4 consortia, and the publishers are all, you know, larger, well, university presses come in 4 sizes. These are the next to the biggest, so they're substantial programs. And then Project Muse pretty much already met our criteria, so it was a no-brainer to include them. And here's how we're organizing the work. We had the initial grant outlined 3 research teams. But licensing principles is the one that lost its leader. So it took us a little toing and froing to find people to co-chair that team. Steve is the director of Duke University Press, and Teresa is the Dean of Libraries at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. The user experience team is also looking at issues like accessibility, and the course use team is looking at ways faculty use books and promoting their use. And then 2 things that came out of that September meeting, which are sort of, you know, the beauty of research is you know where you're starting, but you don't know where you're going. One is that we were having a back and forth discussion about whether interlibrary loan has a negative impact on sales. Some of the publishers in our group felt that, you know, they were not willing to allow interlibrary loan for ebooks, not even at the chapter level, because it cost them sales. Yeah, we found it and fixed it while you were at things. So after a little bit of a, you know, to and fro on this topic, we said, hey, We don't have to argue, we don't have to have opinions here, we can get data. So why don't we do a little project to derive the data on our participating libraries' last, 10 years of interlibrary loan, and turn it over to the publishers and let them see if they feel there's been an impact. Who knows, maybe it's a positive impact. We don't know. Well, that has been more difficult to achieve than you might think. We're still trying to do it. And then the other new thing that came out of the September meeting is the creation of a fourth research team for platforms and preservation. Because the people there very rightly said, well, if we're asking for perpetual access rights, that is such a mushy term. And one of the things we want to do with this project is to define it in a way that it's actually valuable, that the publisher or the vendor licensing the content understands what their responsibilities are, and that the library can actually do something with that content. So this team is looking at criteria. What should a platform support? What do we need to do? How do we describe it? And then the last component, and really the main thing that I was recruited to do, is an environmental scan, which is a market research project to sort of see the state of the art and also outreach to the publishing community to get them to come on board with the principles. So here's what we're working on. We've already done a literature review. We want to annotate it a little more before we put it up on our website. I've been working on the survey for about 6 weeks now, and it's still not quite ready to go. It's getting closer. If there are publishers here who would like to pre-test, please talk to me afterwards, give me your card. That's just at the point I am right now, and I would love to get more feedback. I've set it up so that if people want, these are kind of daunting questions. They may be tough for people to answer, they may be sensitive, they may want more background on it. So I am very happy to follow up with interviews, talk to people, and see if we can reach an agreement. Those results get shared with all of the other groups, and what we want to do is actually impact behavior. So people who tell us now that they're not willing to support all three principles, I'll be going back to again and again and saying, well, these are all the people who support it. Don't you want to be part of this cohort? Rah, rah. So that's what we plan to do. How much time did that take?
2 minutes.
Okay, I have tons more slides, but I'm sparing you them. But if you have good questions later on, maybe we'll pull up some of those. And here's our website again. Thank you.